Hello everyone, my name is Stephen Redman and welcome to another episode of Pastor's Library. This is the channel where we discuss everything to do with theology books that might have a presence on a reading list for a seminary course or for a bachelor's or master's degree in theology or biblical studies, or simply books that have piqued your interest because you've seen them at a friend's house, you've seen them in your own pastor's office, or something else. Whatever it is, today we hope to help you answer questions. Remember that if you haven't subscribed, please click on the button. Please also remember to ding the bell because that means you'll be notified when we release another episode. And if you have a question which isn't covered by this or in any of the other videos, then please ask it below. I will do my best to get back to you. I have a finite number of books, but if I know about it, I will certainly let you know. So I want to just talk to you about a couple of different types of book that I have in my library, and then I want to talk to you about a really special book that I've recently purchased, which I think would interest you. This is a very small, compact book by Joachim Jeremias. Now, this had to be translated into English. I think the author was German originally. He died in 1982. This book was published in 1957. It's 110 pages. And it's a book that I have often read. The day I bought it, I read it that night. It's so easy to get through. But this deals with the agrapha, which are the unknown sayings of Jesus. Hence the title, Unknown Sayings of Jesus. And the agrapha, things that you might have read in the scriptures and not realise that they aren't actually originally mentioned in the scriptures. So it's an interesting thing. It's sort of a backup to any study you're doing where you may read and think, hang on a minute, it says this, but where do I find it? And the answer is, if it's an agrapha, you won't find it. But that's an interesting book. I mention this because in America you can get a very good used copy for $7. In the UK you can still get a brand new one for £17. That's a little bit about the difference between the cost of Christian books in the UK and the USA. Not that I'm moaning, but that's always been a worthwhile book. I've always looked at it and I've always found it helpful. Now, you will realise that there are a number of things in our Bibles, in our New Testaments in particular, that are quoted or referred to or alluded to, and yet the quotes, the allusions, they're not in our Bibles. And so where do they come from? Now, recently, Gregory Lanier has launched this book, which is Apocryphal Prophets and Athenian Poets, Non-Canonical Influences on the New Testament. And believe me, if you're typing that name into a search engine, it takes you a while. This is a really interesting book. Now, firstly, let me tell you about the price of this, because it's not going to be cheap. £50 in English money, $50 in American dollars. And once again, we get extra tax in the UK. But this was published in 2024. It's a B&H publication. And it's 1,068 pages. It's beautifully laid out, very clear font on white paper, superb. And I got into this very quickly. Now, when I'd read about this book, I thought to myself, this sounds to me like it's Joachim Jeremias' book, but covering everything. Not just covering those, I think, 14 lost sayings of Jesus that he's referring to. This is a real deep academic work in that it goes as far as it can do, and I can only really describe this to you by giving you examples. So, for example, in Matthew 23 verse 35, when it's talking about the death of Zechariah, it says, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah the son of Barachiah, whom you murdered between the shrine and the altar. Now, you can read that through and you're thinking, yeah, and maybe not even question who this Zechariah is and how we know this, because this is Jesus quoting this. And is he talking about John the Baptist's father, or is he talking about the prophet Zechariah, who wrote the prophecy of Zechariah in our Old Testament, or is he talking about someone else? Now, this is really a very interesting issue, which takes about 3 pages to get to a point of reasonable resolution. And fundamentally, this book suggests that whereas there are some people who have suggested it could be the father of John the Baptist, that this is largely, most likely, talking about a different Zechariah altogether. Realistically, there are lots of options available. I don't think Zechariah was anywhere near as popular as it is today. But realistically, you can read in here what the early church fathers believed about this. People like, for example, Origen has something to say about it. And Priscillian of Avila has got something to say about it, and others. So what it does say is that even in those times, there was nothing extant that would tell you this definitively. So that's one type of thing, that you would look in this book and it would tell you everything that is known, and it would help you muddle your way through to understanding. Now, I have to be absolutely honest with you on this next one. I had often sat and thought, oh, what am I reading about now? But I had never really done the research. In 2 Timothy 3 verse 8, it says, just as Jannes and Jambres opposed Moses, so also those opposed the truth. And I sort of thought, well, I can't just think where they are mentioned in Exodus or Leviticus or Numbers or Deuteronomy, but they must be. And I'd sort of let that pass, which I am amazed that I have let myself get to 65 years old still believing that load of rubbish. But the truth is that the canonical scriptures never, ever mention these 2 men. And yet, it's in our canon in 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 8. There are a number of people that take this argument up, and it's very interesting. I can't really summarise this without reading you rather a lot of pages. But Apuleius, Numenius, Origen, Ambrosia and Pliny are just a few of the names that have something to offer us. Now, I don't know about you, as someone who started off with a Thompson's Chain Reference and a Strong's Concordance before I had any other books, I think that the challenge to realise that you have to do some proper research to answer these questions is something that might rattle your cage a little bit. And so it's really helpful to have a definitive volume like this book where you can turn to and find that answer. And if there is no definitive answer, he will tell you. And if there are a very strongly suggested answer, he will tell you that, but he will say, well, whereas I think that is where the argument is going, it might not be the answer. And so there are degrees of answers in this book, most of which are satisfying, 1 or 2 of which are not. So what about in Jude, verse 9, where it says about the dispute between the devil over the body of Moses? Now, I am well aware that Enoch and probably Jubilees have influenced some of the New Testament writers. Hence the reason why I have got Nicholsberg's 2-volume commentary on Enoch, which is absolutely brilliant. Van der Kam's 2-volume commentary on Jubilees, which is also in the brilliant category. And there are books like that are in my library because I have at some time or other wanted to do a bit of research to see what these influences were. And so, whereas I would have to say to you, the Hermeneia commentaries on 1 Enoch and on Jubilees, I think set the gold bar standard for such commentaries. And they are very interesting to read. I am not suggesting that Jubilees or 1 Enoch are the Word of God. They are non-canonical books. But they do have something to offer because Jude and Peter clearly were familiar with the contents of them. And neither Jude nor Peter referring to them because they believe them to be the Word of God. They're referring to them because they and some of their hearers were familiar with them. And they are being used for allusion purposes or for explanation, and that's fair enough. Let's not see things that are not actually written on the page, please. Let's try and recognise that the Bible is the Bible and anything else is just that. It's something else. So, when we're talking about the body of Moses, a dispute about the body of Moses, what Lanier says is that fundamentally this is either a quote from the Assumption of Moses or the Testament of Moses, which I don't even think they're still extant, actually. I think the Assumption of Moses we may have a bit of, and the Testament of Moses. But the bottom line is, these are where we know the quotes came from because of other people that have quoted from them that Lanier is able to bring out for us. And, ultimately, I love doing good Bible research. I honestly get a bit of a kick out of it. It's why I've got 4,100 books plus a whole rack of journal articles, journal copies. And it matters to me that I can reach out and touch something and flick through the pages and find out what I need to know. But what's really helpful is that if I can go to Lanier and get that answer without going through loads and loads of other books, it saves my time. And I know that using Logos or other good Bible software is an additional time saver. Although I like flicking the pages, if I'm honest, and I'm probably, I am a Logos licensee, but I am still probably going to do this the hard way. But Lanier cuts away a lot of the hard work, and it's all in one volume. Now, what he largely does is he splits this into sections. And what he starts by saying is, rather than offering the views of particular scholars, he tries wherever he can to refer to the latest research, and he wants us to be able to access it straightforwardly, and I think he's done a very good job of that. So he's dealing only with concrete primary evidence, which is the sort of evidence that you would want to include in, say, a PhD thesis. So he's done some hard work on this. He's mainly quoting from monographs and articles in journals rather than commentaries. And that's often because the commentaries don't necessarily have that amount of detail, but also because the journal articles do tend to be the most up to date. So I'm just going to give you another example, I think. That is from Acts chapter 17. It says, "As even some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring." Now, I don't know about you, but I've always read that and thought, right, okay, Luke is quoting from a contemporary poet, and that's fair enough, but I don't know who it is and I don't know how to find that out. Well, many church fathers noted the use of a pagan poet here, but not all of them weighed in on its source. For example, Origen simply stated that Paul quoted another author, which, thank you, Origen, for that outstanding bit of academic work for us. But to be fair, it was even harder in those days, and they certainly didn't have logos. But what we do know here is that there are a number of people that weighed in on this who say this is a quote from Aratus, the astronomer, and this is a real clear guidance. Clement has written this down as well, a number of really strong sources. So that's something that we can say, well, you want to know that? Great, it's in here, it's in the book, it's clear. There are several pages dealing with that one. What about the one in Titus 1 verse 12, where it says, Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy bellies. This is one of those most pleasant things that was ever written in the Bible, isn't it? You just read it and you think, what a lovely thing. Now, this again can be fairly easily chased down. And there are two names that come out. And I don't think it's because it's an either or. I think they both wrote this, which tells you it was a saying of the day. And it was a common saying. And Epimenides and Callimachus both quote that. And I've probably horribly persecuted their names in my pronunciation. But basically, what I've tried to do is give you an idea of the sort of answers you can get from this book. Now, if of all those things that I've just gone through, if none of them ring your bell, well, just don't bother with this book. After all, it'll save you $50, £50, whatever currency you're paying in. This is definitely a book which maybe you should avoid. But for people like me who like to be able to go and grab a book off the shelf, which I know will have the answer or the most close thing to an answer for me, then I would suggest to you this is a really good buy. I sometimes have to pay but this much for a book. I don't like doing it very often because I am a man of limited means. But as you can tell by the shelves behind me, and if you've done my tour, then you'll know that there are a lot of books in here. And I haven't been able to buy them all at used prices, but I have been able to buy these slowly over a long number of years. And I am so grateful for the fact that I can go out and look in them. And what I would say to you is this book is one of the most exciting books that I have put my hand on in the last 6 months. I think this is a really excellent volume, one which would help anybody that's wanting an answer. Who said that? It's a quotation. It's clearly a quotation, or it's clearly an allusion. Where's it come from? Well, the answer is this book will tell you. So, Gregory Lanier, thank you very much. Thank you for your effort. I appreciate it. Your non-canonical influences on the New Testament are a breath of fresh air to some little old pastor in York, England. And thank you so much for writing them. I hope this has helped you. If it has, please click on the bell, please subscribe, please comment below, because it'd be great to hear from you. I do try to get back to everybody within a couple of weeks. And if you have any ideas for future Pastor's Library focuses, please suggest them. It doesn't necessarily mean I can do them straight away, but they go on my list and I try to work down that list. I hope this has been a useful one to you. Thank you so much for listening today. Thank you for your support to the channel. It really makes an old pastor very happy. And until next time, all I've got to say is bye.